are starting our first video. That's legit. I need my books. Hope my dog's not getting in the way. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is why you don't go. This is the blessing of going to the gym when you haven't gone in a long time. I'm good when I sit here for a bit. But yes. Hello guys. My name is Melanie. And in this case, I did start a channel. I started documenting my reading and what books I'm reading. I love books. Yeah, it's not going well. I can already kind of feel it in my bones right now. So this is supposed to make the audio way better. Yeah, this is, we're hoping that it goes really well. I'm not very good at with the mic, but we're gonna try. And I think this is gonna be great. So, hi, my name is Melanie. I am a kinder reader. I never really took reading seriously. I've read before. I've liked things in the past before, but it's just now recent that I'm like, you would call it becoming a reader, taking everything seriously. Let's say that. It mostly comes from the fact that I want a library that reflects the books that I've enjoyed, which sounds crazy. And I want the library to be of books that I have read. I haven't read all these books, not even close at all. But the goal long term is to have a library that my kids would love and enjoy one day. Yeah, that's the long goal. Right now, I don't have kids. Right now, I'm also not married either. So I have a very long time to prepare for this. I have a little dog. He's not little at all. He's a 100-pound Saint Bernard and Great Pyrenees doodle mix. So he's a good little mix here. He looks like a Saint Bernard, but he's not a Saint Bernard at all. But he's a big boy. And I didn't think he was gonna sit here. He might get up, he might move. Hopefully he doesn't block this video. But I decided to do, you used to call it a tag. Well, they normally call it a tag, the newbie tag. But I realized I didn't like a lot of the questions, and I feel like that doesn't give a good representation of who I am and really like what I want. And Gideon, his sniffing's gonna be on this. Yeah. But I wrote down the questions in this book here of the questions I want to answer. And I feel like this will give a really good idea to, this will give a really good idea to what's expected, what I expect of myself, how I like to read, what I like to document, like, and what that looks like. I feel like this is for me just as it is for everyone else. I want to have a digital, I guess you would call it a digital journal of my book experiences. I'm not a writer person. When I write things down, I write very few words, and then when I come back to it, I'm kind of like, maybe this doesn't actually represent what I felt. But if I do it like this, it works. But yes, I have some questions I wanted to ask. And so it's kind of like the newbie tag, but also the becoming the reader tag at the same time. It's both. It's going to be long. I do know that. But hopefully it's not too bad. But I hope this gives like a really good, like, get to know me sort of thing and kind of see what I'm about, because that's pretty cool. I think that's cool. I hope it's cool. Let's see. This is when you should have flipped the book open before you started the camera, but it's okay. That's me. All right, I got it here. I got my questions. It's random, meaning like, I think I'm gonna start with the evolution of a reader questions first, and then I'm gonna lead into the BookTube Newbie questions, and we'll start from there. First question's definite is, what do you read and how has your reading taste evolved? I feel like to kind of give you a cliff note in terms of like reading, I was never like a reader when I was younger. And when I mean younger, in elementary school, my parents had to force me to read a book. The first book I read that you didn't have to force me was Vampire. It was about vampires. It wasn't Vampire Diaries. It was Twilight. And you'd be surprised what age I read this in. I read this in 5th grade. 5th and 6th grade, I read Twilight. I loved it. I binged those books. I flew through those books. I didn't know I liked to read until that book series. Have I yet reread Twilight series? No, I have definitely not. Would I? I'm not sure because I'm a little scared that I was hooked to a series before I actually really knew how to read. I don't know if I would like it again. And I kind of don't want to tarnish that memory of Twilight. But Twilight was like the first type of book that kind of got me into reading. At the time, I realized I love vampires. Do I love the movies of Twilight? Yes. Do I keep rewatching them even to this day? Yes. Will I read back the book? Still not sure about that. But what I do know is that Twilight, first book that got me hooked. I went to a private school, so we had very interesting reading choices for middle schoolers. So we read Shakespeare, we read Screwtape Letters, we read, I don't even have a lot of these books here. Bud Not Buddy. We read a lot of classics in middle school. So that was like the beginning part of like my reading, I guess you'd call journey, because I kind of realized I enjoyed reading hard things. Because you coming from Twilight where it's all like light and fluffy, then to kind of jumping into middle school reading where you're reading A Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I read those in sixth grade, and then we moved to Shakespeare, and a lot of some like old classics. My reading taste changed a lot. So I went from that to wanting to read really deep classics. So then if I found a book of, it was mostly like a classic. Most of the books I read at the time was classics because I read a lot in school, but it wasn't by choice. But I low-key loved them at the same time. Then I moved to high school. High school was kind of when I started picking up reading more. I went to a bookstore in my neighborhood, and I don't remember this book, but I remember it was this tiny little like this size book, mass paper book by, don't get me wrong, I think it's Meg Cabot was her name. Do I remember the name of the book? No, but I read that book 3 times. I loved it. It was my first romance book I ever read. Should I have been reading it? No. Would I read it back again? Probably not, but I loved it. That's when I realized the types of books I loved. I loved romance. I loved fantasies. That was when like my whole movie and series phase changed. So I was watching Vampire Diaries. I was watching, I'm trying to think of other fantasy books that are like out. I was reading The Hunger Games. So I did read the Hunger Games trilogy. I bought those. Also Divergent. So a little bit of like YA, I guess you'd call dystopian, YA. Both of those are dystopian. That was like my next set of books that I kind of went into. So between romance and that sort of dystopian kind of fantasy, a little bit, that was the type of books I was reading in high school. I didn't read a lot, but when I did read, I binged the books, man. I would just I would read like 3 books in a short period of time, and then I won't pick up another book for months, for years. But other than that, during that time, the other things that I read a lot of, then when it was not that was more consistent, was devotionals and self-help books. I read a lot of that towards the end of my high school year and into a lot of my like early college was when I got back into reading nonfiction. I was heavy on nonfiction for at least 6 years. I probably read, let's see, for every 10 nonfiction books I read, I probably read 1 fantasy, 1 fiction. That's very not typical compared to how I'm reading now. Now I don't read as much nonfiction. I do love it every once in a while. I currently like read, I have some authors I kind of like to read all the time. Comer. Gosh, what's his name? It's books up here. Comer is one. I did read this book by Jonathan Haidt. So good. I read, this one I haven't read yet because this just came out. But his other book that he co-wrote with, read that one, wrecked me. Nonfiction. Michael Todd, read his books. Let's see who else. Ben Stewart, read his books. So yeah, like I was in a nonfiction phase. I was more about like growing myself, bettering myself, the whole 9 yards. And you're like, Melanie, you still haven't gotten to where we are and we've been babbling. I get it. I've been rambling. But that leads to me where I am now, current day. Still love my nonfictions. I used to buy a crap ton of nonfiction books that I have not yet read. Hence why like a lot of them are still here. Will I read them? Yes. But I feel like my goal and my focus now is fiction and getting to understand what I like, because Towards in the middle to end of college, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I started reading romance books. So I went from my nonfiction phase and then I went straight into romance. But I was still reading probably like 3 or 4 books a week. Not a week. Let me slow down. A year. Not a lot. Like I was reading it sparingly. Hit fiction back again. Specifically hit romance. Specifically hit romantic fantasy. Loved it. Enjoyed it. I would binge books. When I mean binge, I would go through 4 or 5 books in a short period of time. At the time, I was using, and I still am using, Kindle Unlimited. And that was like my saving grace in college because I had no space and didn't even have the money to even buy the books at the rate I was reading them. Did I record a lot of the books I read? No. Did I remember a lot of the books I read? No. This is why I wanted to do this, because even if I wrote them down, I still don't remember the plot. I still don't remember anything, like at all. And it was mostly because the books were dense. Was dense the right word? Gosh, I need to let me rephrase this. The books were not great. Let's say that. I was reading a lot of smut before it became a thing. I guess even before TikTok got big. And I don't read that anymore. That's what I used to read a lot. I don't enjoy it, mostly because I'm more into depth now, which was the main reason why I left fiction in high school, because I thought it was childish. And then I threw myself into nonfiction because adults do that. And then I realized adults can actually read fiction. And then I realized that when you go through so many books and you're kind of just like, you read, you're like, there was no plot. It was just romance. You get bored. You really do get bored. And that's when I was like, you know what? Let me give fantasy a shot. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm currently trying to find what fantasies I really like, what sci-fi books I like. Do I love romance in books? Yes. Do I want it to be the focus around a book? No. Can I solely read romance books for the rest of my life? Definitely no. Cannot. And I don't think I could, because I have to go through some like periods of gaps. I gotta give myself a break when it comes to romance. I know what I like, but I'm now now in a period of time where I don't mind romance. I actually like it if it's a subplot, but I need a story. I need a mystery. I need something else other than the romance in a book these days, and that's where I am now when it comes to the types of books I read. So I'm not anti-romance at all, but what I will hope in the future is that I can kind of find more books that are my style, because all the books right now that are popular has so much spice in it, so much smut in it, that it makes me not even enjoy the book at all, because then the only thing I remember from the book is that, and then I'm kind of just like, ugh. Then I don't want to pick up another book. So I stay clear from that just so that I can enjoy reading and love it. 2, I don't want a book like that on my shelf and then my kids accidentally read it, because then that's gross. That's gross. To each his own. To each his own. All right, but that was my first book. That's my first question. That's how my taste has evolved with books. Right now, I'm kind of just figuring out what I like, figuring out what authors I like, because I've realized that there are just certain authors that I'll enjoy them every time, and there's just certain authors like I just can't read. Francine Rivers. I love Francine Rivers. I think her fiction has great depth to it, which is why I've loved every book I've read from her so far. Also, I think she's an indie author, but here's like another author that I probably won't read, but Nia Authors, great romance. If you love romance, go for it. She is probably where you should be going, but I just am not like that. Do I love myself a Hallmark movie? Yes. But do I want to read it all the time? No. So I choose to pick books that are a little mixed. So probably not read another one. New authors. Who else? What's that girl that's popular? LV Silver. I'm gonna butcher her name. I apologize. Her. Who else? Kate Roberts. Those are authors I probably would not. I wouldn't read any books from them, just because it's just not in the like, it's not the types of books I'm reading these days and want to read. What's the other book? The one with it's the girl with the billionaires, the dream billionaires people. Gosh, it's gonna irritate me that I can't figure out terms and conditions. The author of that, I'm gonna put her name here, but I've tried reading her books. It's too much for me, so I just choose not to. So that's how my taste have evolved. Those would have been books I would have definitely have read, and authors who I would definitely would have read like 2 years ago. But now, a lot different. Let's see. How do you read? And how has your format changed? I kind of talked about it before. Before, when I was in high school, it was all paper. I used to annotate the crap out of my books, and then I stopped. Then I stopped reading. And then when I was in college and I got back to reading, I purchased nonfiction books because I could get them really cheap. But then also my fiction books I read, they were on my Kindle. Definitely. Let's see. Then that third question. I love how I'm flying through some of these questions. How much do you read? Do you read more or less than you used to, and when do you read? Was it 2022, 2023? I've read roughly 20 books for the last 2 years, a year. That's about how much I read. I feel like I'm on trajectory to read a lot more because I kind of am reading what I enjoy reading. And the times before that, I would go through like 3 months of intense reading, and then I just would stop reading for months. So I guess you'd say I'm reading more. How often? I don't read that often. Even now, I read pretty fast. I just don't read through like at all a lot. Like right now I'm off for summer break because I'm a teacher, so I get my summers. So I tend to have more time to read now than I do when I'm working. So summertime I read more. During the year I read less. I probably will read like 1 book a week if I'm not like stuck. That's the least in that case. So how has BookTube changed me as a reader? BookTube introduced me into reading back again and enjoying it, because I realized that when I was looking at the reading and just everything that's out there, I learned more about the books that like different types of books out there, different genres, different authors, and that definitely has encouraged me to read more and has encouraged me to know that there are more books out there that might not be what everybody's raving about. Because right now I'm in a phase where like I don't read a lot of spice, pretty much at all, non-existent. So finding authors where like there's a good romance plot, there is tension, but then there's also a fantasy going, a mystery going, something else going, has been something I've been looking for. There's a few authors I found like that that I've been loving recently. I love how I'm recommending them at the same time. Melanie Dickerson, she makes Christian-based younger audience books. The Beast of Beast and Beauty by Shonda Hahn. Love it. I'm a sucker for Beauty and the Beast retellings, definitely. So that's how it's changed me a lot. BookTube has kind of showed me a lot more books. It gives me the heads up, because the one thing I realized recently, which has defeated me a lot, is that I would just pick up books and not know a lot about it. And BookTube gives me the chance to kind of get a Cliff Note version of a book to see if it's something that I'd enjoy before I even try, and then disappoint myself and then not end up picking the book for months. Let's see. 5. Why did you start this channel, and what are like my expectations for myself? Not even for anyone else, but for myself. Why did I start it? As I said, I wanted a visual digital journal almost of all the books I've read. 1. 2, I want to kind of share the things that I've found in books, more so like the different authors and different series that I feel are not popular, that I'm entertained. Because a lot of the time I'm looking for a very specific type of fiction, and there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of books that have been written, but the only thing is that they're just not popular. And I want to document that, and I want to share it with other people, because the same reason how I'm now getting back and enjoying reading is because of people who have showed me books that I just didn't know I would enjoy. So yeah, that's why I wanted to start a channel, just to kind of document, more so like a digital journal of my reading and everything going on in my 20s. Let's say that, because I'm in my 20s, so everything's changing. I'm a different person every year. Not like crazy different, but like different person every year. Reading chase changes, And it's great to look back and see all the books I read each year, which I honestly, I don't remember any of the books I read in the past years unless they're on my bookshelf. So expectations for myself, I just want to have fun. And it sounds like crazy. I just want this to be a place that I'm not stressed about what books, like keeping up with everything. I kind of just want just a place to just, I guess, I don't want to, it sounds horrible. I want a place that I can just vomit out all of the book things in my brain, because if not, it just sits in my head and I don't want to write it. My hand's gonna hurt. So that's another thing, expectations. Let's see. Question 6 that I have is, why do you love reading? It's an escape for me. I'm learning a lot about myself, like graduating college and all of that, and realizing that like a lot of my everyday life, everything is in my head, which sounds crazy to think, but like my brain doesn't stop. And the only times my brain stops thinking is watching TV shows, or reading a book, when I'm completely immersed in something outside of this world. And it's like my way of kind of just relaxing, which some people don't think it's relaxing, but I do, which is great. Let's see. What books or series got me into reading? A series that actually got me really back into like fiction reading when I was on my whole nonfiction hiatus was the Selection. I think that was the first time. I don't think I had Kindle Unlimited at the time, but I've reread the Selection. I guess I would say 1.5 times. I read it fully through twice. Last year I read the first 3 books. I think I would keep rereading the first 3 books every time I had the itch for it, but I really loved it. It was great. That was something that got me started back into reading fiction. Nonfiction, honest to goodness, it was probably, and I hate, this is kind of cliche to say this too, but to get me back into nonfiction and enjoying it is probably the Bible. This is one of the books series, I guess you'd call it, because a lot of books like stem from it, and it kind of is just like those little China dolls where like you take one open and there's another little doll inside. You take one open, there's another little doll, just like that. So yes, there's that. That's kind of the book series that kind of got me started. One of the book series I haven't actually read, which is what everyone gets, book series that gets them started, is Harry Potter. I have not read Harry Potter yet at all. Let's see. What are some challenges that you think that you'll have on BookTube? Comparison. I think one word only, comparison. I think it's so easy to compare yourself to everyone else, like what they're reading, what you think is a good book. And I've realized that not saying it doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter, but big picture, everyone else is gonna read a book and like it. You might not have to like it. Some other people might be able to read certain books that are popular, and you might not be able to read certain books that are popular, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person, it doesn't make them a bad person. Everyone has their own taste in books. So when it comes to comparison and like challenges, big time. Definitely comparing myself to like other people and how much they're able to read, and maybe just the time they might have that I might not have. There's always something you can compare yourself to, or someone you can compare yourself to, and that's something that is always a hard thing, because when I first tried to do this on Instagram, I did, and I say try because I did try, and the problem is that I kept comparing myself to everybody's Instagram page, and it literally was the worst thing ever, because then I was like, oh, I'm doing research, and the research turned into, oh, look how great these videos are. My videos aren't that great. So comparison is gonna be my challenge, and some book goals. I've set goals for this year, but they're very loose goals. The goal was to read 50 books this year. Do you want to know how many books I've read? I don't think I've even read half. Am I worried? No, because I specifically set 50 books because I know that in a good month, I could read 10. On a bad month, I can read 5. So I kind of was like, you know what? I think I read 10 books. No, I didn't start back reading till like March or something like that. That guy, Jonathan Haidt, not this book, but I don't have the other book on I'm lending it to somebody. But that other book that he has, got me started back again, because I haven't read a book probably since last summer, which was a selection. Well, that wasn't the last book I read, but around the time I was reading the selection, and I didn't read again till end of February into March. Read that, got back into some other books, read a couple Francie Rivers books, bawled my eyes out as usual. So it's just, the goal is, of course, I want to read a nonfiction book. Do I want to read one a month? I think that might be a stretch, but it would be nice to read one or at least 5 nonfiction books for the year. That's my personal book, not like a book study book or a book club book or something like that, just for me. So that's definitely one thing I want to do. So I already told you 50 books. For this, I want to actually keep up with it, meaning I want to post pretty often and record a lot of like my thoughts and reactions to books in the moment. And the reason why is because give me a day or two, I'm gonna forget about it, because my brain forgets a lot of things. But then also, I want to remember what it feels like, because there are certain books I remember reading a few months ago where I'm kind of just like, if I could have like a short 2-minute Cliff Note version of how I felt about a book at that moment in time, I would. So that's also another goal. And I want to have fun with Instagram too. I want to use Instagram as like my reading journal, mostly because I've tried a reading journal. Let's say that. Meaning I've bought the reading journal. I even recently got the scrap paper for the reading journal, but I have not done anything. It's so hard for me to get in the rhythm of things like that. And like, I think it's been like 12 books now that I've read, and I have not updated my journal at all. So you can see why it's a problem. So that's a goal, and I think this is a better way for me to hold myself accountable, because it's fun. At least I'm not like comparing my book journal to what I see everywhere online. So at least this is something that I can go back, I can see the emotions on my face, I can see how I felt about it, I can see how passionate I am about it. And yeah, that's also one thing. And then the goal is to read a lot of the books I've bought in the last couple months. I've bought a lot of books. I've bought a lot of books in the last year. I went to a conference in January, and I came home with at least maybe 12 nonfiction books. Am I going to read all of them by the end of the year? Heck no. But I did the same thing with the fiction books. And the goal is to read them, to not buy anything else, to finish what I have. Because the one thing that I don't want to create a habit of is buying things just to buy things. Because it is so easy for me to just buy books that I think I'm going to enjoy, but I'll never get to the book. So I want to keep that in the back of my mind when I read as well, because this is like my vision. My vision is that as I'm moving in like less than a month, so the vision is here in my next place when I move. My bookshelf, the only books that are going on my bookshelf are books that I have read, period. No questions. The only books that are on that bookshelf are books I've read, because I've realized, like, when there was a husband and wife, a couple that led a group that I was in last summer, and I went over, they invited us to their house, and you looked at his entire living room covered in books, mostly nonfiction, covered in books, like almost the whole 4 corners were covered in books. And I asked him, how many of these books have you read? And he looked at me straight face and said, all of them. And I was like, you serious? And he goes, why would I? Why would I have a whole bunch of books and not read them? And I sat there and I said, you're right. And I think after that moment, I realized, like, a goal of mine is to make sure that the only books that ever go on my bookshelf are books that I have read. And that kind of keeps me accountable. It gives me goals to check off. And then, of course, you kind of want to move all the books you bought on the bookshelf so it like fills the bookshelf. So yes, as I said, that was the goal. Some of my goals I have in general for this. We'll see how many times I post. I might be posting a lot. I'm trying to do something this summer because I get a little bored, especially when I don't have my typical 9 to 5 during the summer. I'm enjoying my break though before I go back and start teaching again, but I'm taking it in. So in this case, that is it. Those are all the questions I have. So I know it's not traditional. I know I didn't exactly do the newbie challenge. I know I also didn't exactly do the evolution of a reader challenge. I maybe have added a question that was a me question in there as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about me, a little bit about how I became the reader I am today, what books I'm reading currently in the moment. To end this thing out, I'm gonna show you some of the books I'm reading, or I'm currently in the middle of. I'm in the middle of more than one book. Ooh, Melanie Dickerson, Captive Maiden. I'm halfway through it. We'll see. It's not horrible, but it's also not my favorite. Let's see what else I'm in the middle of. I just started The Assassin's Apprentice. I am Rest in War. I'm reading in an audiobook. Let's see. The City of Bones. Something I've always dreamed of reading when I was a child, but my mom was like, it's about demons. I'm like halfway through The City of Bones. So I'm trying to think, are there any other books I'm in the middle of right now that I have not made known? A Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, I'm rereading. So I don't know if I'd call it in the middle of. I kind of just pick it up whenever I feel like I'm always in a hurry. Those are the only books I'm actually in the middle of at the moment. I'm trying to finish those up and then finish up some series. You will see kind of a recap of the series I finish real soon. I'm planning on doing a binge session right now. Hanging up the TV remote and pulling out a book. So yes, thank you guys for watching this video. If you made it this far, well, you have been initiated. You know a lot of things about me. You know a lot about the books and the books I've read, the books that have taunted me, and then my dog's gone. You've met my dog, but you know a little bit about me. This is a little snippet of kind of like the thing that's growling around in my head. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys all have a great time reading, enjoying your summer, doing the things that whatever you guys normally do with your day-to-day. And this was definitely a very weird video. Definitely. I want to say that all my other videos are not going to be like this, but I know that's going to be a lie because my brain is scatterbrained. That's just my personality. And I've accepted that and I'm embracing it. So yeah, I'm going to end this video here. It's getting pretty late. I think I'm going to pick up a book to read. No, not I think. I know I'm going to pick up a book to read to kind of avoid having to edit this video. But ending the video is weird, but I'm just going to say bye. So bye. Till next time.